All right, everybody, we are live again. Dynasty Mirror Search for Huru, and I have a special guest with us. She's not a stranger. Ms. Jacque Johnson from Profile Africa. And today's topic, this morning's topic, this morning's topic is we had the opportunity yesterday evening, last night, we attended a meeting on the African Union and the role that the African diaspora is going to play in the future of Africa. And the ambassador to the African Union, or the African Union ambassador to America, was in the building, and she spoke to us, and we had an opportunity to meet her. So we kind of just wanted to give a recap on what was discussed and what can be expected here in the future in regards to the African diaspora reconnecting and playing a role in the future of Africa. So Jacque, you're the expert in these things, so I'll let you go ahead and take it away.
Hey everybody, it's so good to be back with you on Dynasty Mirror's Search for a Huru show. So many great things are going on, and I'm really happy that we've had some breakthrough in Atlanta in particular with regards to the Africa agenda and where we all fit in collectively as part of the diaspora. Many of you know that the diaspora has been declared the sixth region of the continent of Africa. And that's the first important part, I think, that we might want to talk about a little bit, just because we need to understand what that means and why we have become so valuable to the African continent. And actually where we fit in, I think, is important. So the African Union ambassador, Her Excellency Dr. Arikana, I'm not good at pronouncing her last name, so please forgive me. But anyway, when she came to Atlanta last night and shared, it was just so riveting. And mainly because for me, I see Atlanta as a really critical space around where the collective diaspora in the US fits in. And just to back up a little bit about why we are becoming more valuable to the continent of Africa, it's because as the diaspora, Africa, first of all, has 5 geographical regions. We know North Africa, South Africa, Southern Africa, rather, West Africa, East Africa, and Central Africa. But now there's a 6th region, and that's all of us who make up the diaspora around the world. And that's important to understand, that we are now being brought together as a collective body. And that mandate or declaration took place on May 25th, which is Africa Day, in South Africa in 2012. It was a convening of the African Union and the Pan-African Parliament. Every African head of state and all the policymakers were there. I happened to be in South Africa on May 25th, 2012, and I attended that event. And I have to tell you, it was one of the most spiritual encounters that I personally have encountered throughout my Africa journey. And it really set me on a track for being a part of gathering the global diaspora and making sure that our voices are being heard and that we can play a significant role in how we move with Africa and her growth story. So that day was catalytic to yesterday. Actually, it was the beginning of how we became recognized and more valuable to the African body. So that day on May 25th, 2012, as I said, was so spiritual, but I literally had an encounter with seeing our ancestors there. It was weeping and lamenting, as well as welcoming all of us back to the continent. It felt like a mother literally being reunited with her children that had been stolen or ripped away from her. And I'm telling you, having witnessed that with my own eyes, seeing heads of state weeping and crying on that day and just crying out to God and welcoming us all back, it was certainly life-changing for me. That all being said, this moment that we had yesterday with the ambassador was historic in nature for Atlanta in particular, but for the region. And I think that it sets us on a track for being able to do business better in Africa and helping us rise and reclaim our inheritance. And I think that that's an important aspect of why we need to keep moving the ball and why we need to accept Ambassador for this call, this clarion call that she's making globally to the diaspora and to bring us together. But how did you feel about the encounter?
I felt good about it. I wish people who are in the chat room, I think it was actually streamed live on Instagram or Facebook somewhere. So I'll try to find the link so you guys can watch if you want to. But she's very, I was impressed. I was very impressed. I think moving forward, she's definitely someone who would work in the best interest of really Africans all over the planet, but specifically Africans of the diaspora. She's a great representative. I think the African Union did a great job in appointing her. She's not a career politician. She actually was a doctor, right? A medical doctor who had a practice in Tennessee. She got the phone call, and she took the role. So I think it's nice to see, especially the way she spoke as well. She got straight to the point. She's very aware of the challenges. She didn't sugarcoat anything. She didn't talk in circles. I mean, she was just dead on. So I feel confident that under her leadership that, the African diaspora, African Union will move in the right direction. So I feel real good about it.
Dennis, I want to say, having been, working with you and sharing for probably about 4 years now, almost 5, for me to hear you say that, this is like a big milestone.
Yeah, exactly. Because you guys know I criticize the African Union, I'm criticizing these African leaders, but her, I wish you guys were there to hear her speak. She attended Fisk University. I was very impressed by what she had to say. Like, you won't hear the way she spoke. And again, it was all recorded. So the way she spoke, you're not going to hear African leaders speak this way, or even a Black leader speak this way. So that's why I'm very, very impressed by her appointment, and it gave me a lot of hope in the future of the African Union and the direction we're going in, and how the African diaspora will play a role in the future of Africa. She gave me a vote of confidence. So
that's really powerful coming from you guys. God knows we've worked years on getting you on the other side of thinking. And mainly, a lot of times people on the exterior tend to be highly critical and maintain a certain mentality just because they're not exposed. They're not exposed to the behind the scene progress of what we're working on. And people also have to understand that these type of things that are put in place to correct centuries of negative things that have kept us apart from Africa or kept the African agenda from going forward, it's done in phases and stages. And if you're not there on the front lines of how it's happening, a lot of times that story gets lost and you don't really understand what is happening behind the scenes, which is why these type of town hall meetings is what she actually had yesterday.
LaVoy Michael, she said that in her meeting yesterday. She said it's the diaspora, we're going to be the ones to impact and make the change in Africa. She said that herself. So.
Absolutely, she did several times. And it informs how she moves forward in terms of she's helping us to create a higher value in our involvement. One thing I did get from the encounter way back in 2012, on the day this whole thing began, was that they specifically said that they wanted us on the diaspora to come and be a part so that they could give us a platform to use our intellect, our skills, bring our finances, and be a part of helping Africa grow and continue to develop. I don't think there is a larger body of African diaspora that is more aggressive around going after our things and reclaiming our own heritage with Africa than those of us here in the United States. And that is where a lot of the focus is, because we're practically the only group of African diaspora that was not allowed to bring our culture, bring our heritage with us. So we have a huge gap to fill in terms of reclaiming our inheritance, finding our geographic distinctions with Africa, as well as obviously the wealth that was taken from us. And she did a great job in breaking that down too yesterday, in terms of telling us how this whole thing occurred with not just slavery, but the things that have been the systemic things that have been put in place to keep us apart from one another, and how we're working together now to break that down. And I think that that's marketable for what she's doing across the country, and the kind of platforms she's standing on to bring us this amazing message. And I'm looking forward, as I continue to work with her and others in DC on this and other things that we'll be doing, I'm really looking forward to us actioning much of what she shared yesterday. There's a new system that the African Union has developed specifically for the diaspora here in the United States, or just on a global scale in terms of North America. And they have been broken down, I think, into eight? I think 8 regions. And we here in the US is the 5th region, I believe it is.
For the South. Yeah. Because the South, the America was broken up into different regions in the Caribbean.
Right.
Yeah. So.
And so on a cluster of states are a region here in the US. And then on the state level, they'll have committees and, boards and things over different sectors and aspects of how to engage ourselves with the African agenda. And I'm really happy to see her just bring unity, organization, and structure so that people can invest in many of the projects that is available for us, from growth and development to real estate. It's just a variety of things. I'm really excited to see where we're going from here.
And so she spoke on everything from politics to business opportunities to, Black Americans getting these government contracts. Again, I think, especially in the ADOS community, I wish a lot of you guys could have attended this meeting. Those who have quit on Africa. I think if you would have attended this meeting and had the opportunity to speak to the ambassador, and again, I just didn't see it as just political babble, Pan-African babble. I think what she presented, what she discussed, what she's bringing to the table, what she's offering to the diaspora is something to look forward to. So.
And I want to say that there is
room, and you guys know
for
me,
everyone.
Right, and you guys know me. If it would have been some BS, I would have told you guys. So, yeah.
For sure. And, it really is room for everyone. There's one message I really want to keep sharing with the diaspora, especially those who do not live in Africa and may have gone a time or two or have done small projects or what have you. Believe me, guys, it is so much to do in Africa. There's more than enough for everyone. You never have to become jealous of anybody's work, hate on any project that's going forward with or without you, because believe me, we won't even get it all done in our lifetime. All we're doing is paving the way and making sure that progress is being made to bring us back together collectively. But there's just way too much to be done for anyone to feel A, left out, or B, unskilled for an opportunity. And you know me, I'm going to say it again and again, don't go to Africa looking for a job.
Right.
Go to create an opportunity for yourself and others. because that is truly where the gold is. Creating an opportunity, using your skills, partnering. I have 8 clients moving to South Africa. A couple of them are even in the hair care business, to laundromats, to building schools. I mean, to creating online schools that have certification. There's big money in that, training, so many things. And there's so many unique ways even to redesign your brand for that environment. Things that you may feel are a thing of the past here are prime for doing in Africa. And so it's just more than enough opportunity. And media is picking up as well in terms of 5G is on the way. If you saw Donald Trump's, one of the few things I was really on board with him about was his press conference he held early last week with regards to 5G rolling out across the United States and what that means to how we feature on a digital platform globally. And that is truly the way all brands are going to be assessed 2020 and beyond, based on how you engage in social media and just on the overall digital platform. And that's totally changed my game, because I have to follow my own advice as well, which, by the way, reminds me that on May 25th this year, Africa Day, we are recasting the brand of Profile Africa. It's no longer going to be just Profile Africa, but in essence, it will be Profile Africa worldwide. And it's not just a name, but a mission to literally do that. Profile Africa worldwide. And I'm so excited about it. We'll be doing that in New York City with some partners and others. And I'm really looking forward to how we continue to share the story of not only how to do business well in Africa, but profiling people such as Dynas and others who are doing amazing things for the Africa agenda. And that will take place, like I said, May 25th, Africa Day 2019 in New York. And it will be across all social media platforms. But anyway, back to the African Union.
Real quick, I know this is a separate subject, since you brought up South Africa. What's the word on the street in regards to the elections next month?
May 8th.
Does your boy Malema, does he have a chance?
You know what? Let me answer that.
Okay,
but before let me say this. I will declare Julius Malema to be the person to watch for Africa in the next decade.
Okay.
Whether or not he's going to actually pull this particular election off, I'm not sure, but I know that he has everybody shaking in their boots. And there have been some pretty big people here in America now casting their support to Malema over the ANC.
Right.
And it was shocking. I mean, literally.
Right.
So, but hey, you got to be a futurist. I really want to say, if you're not a futurist, you're going to get left out of so many things. So Africa is the future, and I really believe Julius Malema is the future. He is the set man for the next decade, and he is absolutely someone to watch. Another person to watch in the next decade will be this guy sitting next to me. I know he's got some amazing things on the cards, and we are coming out with a list once we recast Profile Africa worldwide of the 20 top people to watch in 2020 and beyond. And Dynas Amir is on that list. He didn't even know that, but
okay, now I know.
He's going to be one of those guys that will continue to watch and follow the next decade and profile him in unique ways. So I'm really excited about that. But hey, Julius Malema is, you know what? He is so radical about economic freedom, fighting. I have nothing but respect for that guy and what he's trying to do. And he's making a statement, not just for South Africa, but in my view, all millennials. And I do believe in the next decade, he will find himself to become the president of the Republic of South Africa. I don't know if it's in 2019, but he's definitely on the cards for that in the next decade. So people, we need to continue following him and aligning ourselves with a lot of his agenda and seeking his support, as well as we provide support to him. I think that would be amazing as well.
Let's get these mics up. We have 180 people watching, only 66 mics. Let's get these mics up. Also, too, John Anderson, a section of ADOS has abandoned the motherland. That is true. So with that being said, again, I agree with the portion of as far as the federal government, USA owes a debt to descendants of those who were enslaved. I agree with that part. Yes. But as far as the anti-African rhetoric, all of that, I completely disagree with and renounce. Therefore, with that being said, I can no longer roll with ADOS because it just has too many haters in it. Like I can't roll with it anymore. It has way too many haters in it. Again, I understand where they're coming from. I understand how the government owes descendants of enslaved Africans a debt. I understand that. But again, the African, there's just the haterism. I don't know how to say it, just the hate. You know, even towards me, like I'm just like, whoa. I can't roll with it. I can't. So
I do say that we do, as African Americans, we should champion reparations as an issue for the next U.S. presidential election, and it should affect where we cast our support. And my reason for that is, in order for us to really be effective as the diaspora in terms of playing our role for the economic growth of Africa, we have to have the right tools in our hands to do it. And America does owe us that. And I believe that reparations is a huge part of who we are as the African diaspora. And we should be given something literally that in each and every person's hand. If we want to take that and take it to Africa and do something amazing with it, we should have the right to do that.
Got it, Dan, for the super chat. Thank you, Brother Dan. Thank you.
Yeah, so I think that we need to make sure that we are holding our political leaders accountable in the U.S. for their position that they take on reparations, because it is due us. Everybody else has gotten their reparations. Where is ours?
Now she brought up the African passport. Were you there?
Yeah.
Can you discuss what she spoke out about it?
Well, basically, to get it's like a global or a continental passport for the diaspora. But first, it started being addressed from an internal perspective in terms of one African country being, person from any African country being able to travel throughout Africa without having to get a passport for every country, or a visa rather, for every country that they would visit inside Africa. And so that's been happening in phases and stages throughout the continent. Now they're moving that agenda to the diaspora. And I think she misspoke though when she said yesterday that you can get a visa on arrival at Nigeria.
Yeah. No, but see how it works. You have to apply for it online.
Okay.
Then you have to get a kind of like a confirmation email.
Okay.
Then when you go to Nigeria, off the plane, they give you the visa there. Yeah, so you can.
When did that start happening? And then
it's been about a year. But see, the thing is, the visa on arrival is only good for, I think, like 30 days to do that. Versus doing it the regular way. Baboni, Lola, Akaro, versus just going through the normal process where a visa is good for 2 years. So it just depends how often you want to go.
Okay. All right. Well, do you know anyone that successfully achieved that visa on arrival process through Nigeria?
Well, I had a friend who was coming to my coronation.
Right.
So what happened was she never got the confirmation. After like 2 weeks, she never got the confirmation. So she just got on the plane and came, and they wouldn't let her in because she didn't have the confirmation. So they sent her back on the plane. Oh,
wow. Yeah. So I guess you really have to make sure you got that confirmation.
But yeah, they do have visa on arrival.
It'd be interesting anybody out there has achieved that successfully for Nigeria, please post and let us know that, because that's a new development and it's a new process for Nigeria. And I think if more people knew that, they would go that process, because most people are not trying to go and stay longer than 30 days. And if it's a digital thing that can happen every time they go, then I think it would increase, visitor, more people would go.
And then for Milan, I don't think you need a letter. The regular visa, you need a letter of an invitation letter, the regular visa. The visa, the e-visa, I think it's called, or visa on arrival. I'm not sure, but I can ask. I can definitely ask my friend. In fact, African Superstar, when she comes back on, we'll talk about. In fact, she wanted to come back on. I need to message her. We'll get her on later on today. But
yeah, and then of course, a lot of people know this, but for those who don't, you can get a visa on arrival for South Africa. It's never required.
Well, yeah, with South Africa, as long as you have a American passport. Like, so South Africa, places like, shout out to Monique S. And it's free, so you don't have to pay to get a visa.
Right. It's a 90-day visa on arrival. So that's good. Anytime you want to just go to South Africa and have a valid passport and 3 blank pages in your passport, and your passport is not within 6 months of needing to be renewed or expiring.
Is it? Yeah, that's right.
6 months.
Or is it? Yeah, right.
Yeah, if your passport is going to expire within the next 6 months, it'd be more advisable to actually get your passport renewed before you travel, because so many countries will not allow you into their country with a soon-to-be expiring passport. And you do need 3 blank pages at least to travel internationally.
Right. All right, what else we got? So with that being said, the African passport for the African diaspora is in the works.
It's in the works.
So from what she said, the leaders, government officials already got theirs. Next is going to be people who are doing business in Africa. And then it's slowly going to roll out to each region.
Right.
As far as the timetable, I don't know. But that's what she said, because it was definitely brought up.
I think it's a work in progress that will be taking maybe another year or 2 to actually roll out and become, official.
Right.
But give it some time. It is a work in progress, and that in itself is progress. That we have it on the agenda. It is underway, and some great things can really start happening in terms of just that liberty that we feel that we can travel throughout Africa without each country and the costs associated and the documentations and everything. So
is it open to non-Blacks doing business in Africa? I didn't ask that question. That's a great question.
Is it open to non-Blacks doing
African passport?
That is a very good question.
I could definitely ask that.
Yeah, and I'm assuming the question means for anyone from America?
Just a non-Black person of non-African descent.
Yeah. Well, that might depend on the country they're coming from, but if it's America, I think that is a great question. We must ask her. Yeah. Definitely. And she did agree to coming on the show.
She did. Really so happy. Hopefully I can connect with her soon and sit down with her.
Yeah, because they're with the year return happening in Ghana and so many other things that are creating a passageway back to Africa initiative, so to speak. I think that it would be really good to have her on before that whole thing takes on, because it's going to take on another whole life of itself. Once that event happens, then other countries also will follow. And that would be amazing.
Let's see, lots of whites and Asians will try to take advantage. ADOS must be swift. Well, and she brought that up yesterday. That's why at the meeting, there's like a specific panel for each region of black people who want to do business in Africa, so they can take advantage of any type of African Union contract or government contract in general for Africa, instead of it going to non-Black people. So yeah.
Right. it's really geared towards the diaspora, the African diaspora, and not just anyone that's not African or an African descendant. Yeah, that's important because so many other cultures are there doing amazing things, but they've had years, decades, even centuries of being involved, as well as so much money. We really will get that video and post it because you really have to hear about the massive strategy on a global level that has been erected and implemented hundreds of years and years and years. One, to keep us apart from Africa, to keep us thinking that Africa was the dark continent and there were no opportunities there for us. And then just the way previous colonizers have kept their economic grip on African countries, and where we can play a significant role in not only releasing that grip, but also creating more opportunities for great business.
What else we got here in the chat? What is it? Was there anything else that that she spoke on? So we covered the passport, just the diaspora doing business in Africa and making sure they have a inroad to do it. I wonder if there was anything else that she talked about her story. She's from Zimbabwe. She spoke on her story, where she's from, and
just her feeling, her call that she, once she got the call from, the higher ups at the African Union, just where she felt that she could contribute now as someone that is in the diaspora to really take this message around the globe on behalf of the diaspora, and not someone from just the inside who may have just come to fulfill a diplomatic position. And I think that you'll hear that and see that in the fire that she exudes every time she talks about where we're going, and just sharing her story and compelling us all to work together. I think that's the number one message and that we all should be fostering, seriously, is how critical it is to work together, because that has been the number one thing society and all the powers that be have worked so hard to keep us apart, because they know the power of our unity. And if we could tap into that and be supportive of each other in whatever lane we're in as far as Africa is concerned, then I think we collectively can make generational progress and close that gap, build an economic bridge, a sustainable one. That's the other thing. No fly-by-night businesses. We're not looking at that. We want long-term sustainable businesses and opportunities that create generational wealth. And I think if we bind ourselves together, we certainly can achieve that.
You if you got here in the chat room. Yeah, if you want to move to Africa, that's fine. But what are you going to do? I mean, that's the question you got to ask yourself.
Yeah.
I guess, can we talk about South Africa now?
Yeah.
Okay, so Malema, you think he has a chance?
Again, I don't know if he's going to pull it off on this particular.
Who's running this?
Well, in his party, no one, but then we have on the ANC, we have the current president, Cyril Ramaphosa.
Oh, he's going to run again?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And so, he's newly been the president. So his time, he hasn't been president very long. He was mainly there to fulfill the rest of Jacob Zuma's term. And so we just have to see what happens. So he hasn't had his full scale of his time, his 5 years in South Africa leadership. So I think we just kind of have to wait and see. I think Julius Malema is going to give them a really tough time. I really do. But whether he's going to sweep the country and take some of the ANC strongholds, I don't know. That may be a bit of work that he gradually achieves, like the previous election, he won some areas that the economic freedom fighters were now able to control. So it's a process, you know, stage by stage, phase by phase. I think he'll win more this time, but whether it'll be enough to take the presidency of the country, I'm not so sure that's going to happen this time. But if he stays in the game beyond this election, he'll be a serious contender for 2024, I guess it will be, or 2025, 2024. Yeah.
So you guys stay tuned. I'm looking forward to that. Yeah. Malema will win. I hope so.
Yeah, I think.
What's going on with the land exploration or the land, taking the land back?
Some of that has actually occurred.
Oh, it has.
But not large scale. I think it's still going to happen, but I think some of that got put on hold too, so that they can really entrench themselves in the election process that's going on right now. I don't think that it's going to be an issue totally for the campaigns, because people saw some progress, but also know that that is also another area of taking things in phases and stages. It is a campaign issue, and Julius Malema is very aggressive around it, and that alone can get him a whole lot more votes than those that may be a bit more passive towards that effort. But it's kind of things like that can't go full-fledged when a presidential election is actually happening. It's almost like something we're facing here in the US. Do you focus on impeaching Donald Trump the next 18 months?
Yeah, that's all we've been,
right.
Our Black politicians, that's all they talk about.
Right, so
Trump, tax returns, impeach Trump.
Right, so do you focus on impeaching Trump at the tail end of his term and sacrifice concentrating on that versus being reelected, him being reelected, or you getting elected? You know what I'm saying? So that's kind of how the land issue is right now in South Africa. But I think it's going to cross into the next election, which only is going to happen in a couple of weeks. And then based on who wins, it'll determine where that issue falls in line with what's hot and what's not. Yeah. But, and then let's keep our prayers up, everybody, for KwaZulu-Natal and Durban. There was a huge storm, big floods.
No, really.
Several people passed away as a result of it. Quite a few fatalities. So just be in prayer for KwaZulu-Natal and Durban. Dinah's had to step away for a moment. But anyway, I want to take on some of the comments as well. Let's see. Leaders are enjoying. Daniel Hodgson says that kings and African leaders are enjoying Western money and ignoring you. You need to question your country leaders. She talked about that.
She talked about too. We talked about that
yesterday as well.
And what she brought up is the blame goes on the African leaders, but no one's calling out where the money is going.
Right, right. And basically to say that they want to focus on corruption.
Right.
You know,
just on the African end, but
but they're not talking about how corruption happened or how the source of it or why. You know, they'll focus on African leaders are being corrupt, but they're not focusing on or sharing how deep their claws are into Africa's resources and how they're using that to control even those African leaders. So they're benefiting themselves. The previous colonizers are the ones that's benefiting from the actual so-called corruption of African leaders. Hey, this is a good question. Is the passport open to biracials? Please answer by user handle.
I would think so, I guess.
I tell you, that's going to become an issue of contention in the future, I think. Mixed race people as well as other people like the Asians and all. I think that home affairs or external affairs, international relations issues are going to really come up a lot more in the next decade, because that's how they do anyway. So be mindful that anytime you see a bunch of Black people doing anything, they turn that into some mega issue. So when too many of us start going to Africa, these other groups are going to get angry. I can see that in the future. Just like I can see a Black and Brown war coming in 2020 and beyond in America, because what a lot of people aren't aware of here in the US is how much the Hispanic community has benefited over the last 10 years in the US. They've been able to get jobs and training and big contracts where they hire.
You got to thank your Black politicians on the West Coast.
Well,
they played a role in it.
Well,
Maxine and,
Well, and I did say that to her in one of her sessions last year at the Congressional Black Caucus. I actually brought that issue up. That they would look into it. No, but here's the deal. Here's what happened. When President Obama's first term, there was a Black guy who was over the Minority Business Development Agency. He was the executive director. His assistant director was a Hispanic woman. When he left at the end of Obama's first term, Obama just promoted the assistant, and she is of Hispanic, and she's Hispanic. So what she did literally was go around the country and had all of these pop-up shops and all of these events directly to her community. And California was one of the first places, California, Texas, Florida, and I think in New York. But she went around the country holding these events primarily focused on her community, showing them, teaching them, exposing them to where big money was, how to become qualified for contracts, etc. And then her community began to really flourish. The last 4 years of Obama administration, the Minority Business Development Agency that works under the Department of Commerce, who is responsible for helping minority businesses grow and develop, they took first seat in that agenda through the MBDA and her focus on purely and exclusively her community. So, but what I will say is that, be that as it may, now we have someone running the MBDA that looks like us again. So it would behoove us to take advantage of their presence and what they are doing now, but not to say that we're not going to feel the impact of what she just did for 4 years, because I'm telling you, this next decade, you're going to see a huge growth in the Hispanic community, as well as their interaction with us. In my view, is already becoming contentious and disrespectful.
Well, in California, the Black, like in LA, the population in California is just shrinking.
Absolutely, but it's even shrinking all over the U.S., in my opinion. And I know a lot of people are not going to like me for this comment, and it's okay. But we've got to work on unifying our own community from a genetic standpoint. Every time we have a bunch of babies that the mother and the father are not together, we are dividing our wealth, we are dividing our strength, we're dividing ourselves. We create our own divisive ways that all the money in the world is not going to cure. And so when we pair ourselves against the Hispanic community, where 5 to 10 of them are physically living together under one roof, they are pulling their resources together. It's their culture. See, they've been able to bring their culture with them. We didn't. So we have to reinstate a culture of unity amongst ourselves as Black people. We really have to work on that, because that is our Achilles heel. That's the number one thing that keeps us economically disadvantaged, is just spreading our resources and ourselves, and not being a unified family with that, where we have no village. There is no village among us, and that is the problem. So, but the Hispanic people, they have it together, and they are people to watch in the next decade. You're going to see immensely this 5-7 year window of the last 7 years of this decade. You are 100% going to see the impact of that in the early part of 2020, in the next decade. And so it's going to be a Black and brown war. I can see that already. And they're quietly benefiting as minorities. They're not with us. I haven't seen it. And so economically, you're going to see them accelerate and leave us in the wind. So we really have to work together. We really have to see our wealth outside of America, because these opportunities here are extremely limited. And as I advise all my clients, I don't care what business you have, if you don't have an Africa plan and a millennial plan, you have no committed business in the next decade, because everything is shifting from one demographics to the other. And the largest group where there's expansive growth is in the millennial environment, as well as obviously Africa, because 7 out of 10 of the world's fastest growing economies are on the continent of Africa. So you definitely need to continue looking in that direction for your future wealth outlook.
For those Black Americans who refuse to adopt an African plan because our ancestors built America and our bones are buried here, and we built this country, like what would you? And shout out to the Duke for the super chat. She said she wants me to steal your afro.
No. Yeah, I feel sorry for those guys, but in a way I don't, because they really are going to be left out. I think that the diaspora here is definitely going to continue to grow and unify so that we can grow economically. And I think that those who want to continue to work outside of that framework are going to be left out. Yeah, they're definitely going to be left out. I'm still saying you have to have an Africa plan. I don't care if you're a plumber, still have an Africa plan, because Africa will own the next decade, 2020 and beyond. Africa's population growth will outpace every other region in the world. And by 2050, more than 1/3 of the global population will live in Africa. And that could increase really, because as we begin to continue to go there as a united community, people will not want to come back to America, and they will repopulate their own genealogy in Africa. It'll be a lot of first generation African Americans born in Africa as official Africans, and that will take on a new life as well in the next decade. So I'm really excited about all that, all the opportunities that lay ahead of us for those who are focused on Africa, whose eyes are wide open, and who are making progress in the spaces where we already are. I'll be celebrating 15 years on the Africa agenda next year in 2020, and just some really unique things I'll be doing with partners at a large scale to commemorate that, as well as to build a path for the future. And we're just not going to be able to make it without making those adjustments in our lifestyle, in our view, and our focus. And I like something Dinah said earlier about disconnecting from people who just constantly incite hate and ridicule and criticism also against leaders who are actually trying to make progress. But they can't do it by themselves. They need each and every one of us to join hands and become aligned, because, hey, we're never going to agree on 100% of anything. That's not even going to happen with the person you're locked both arms and feet with and sleep with every night. It's not going to happen. But we can agree on principal things that we know are significant to moving us forward as a community of the African diaspora. And that's what keeps us together and continue to work together to forge on and make progress together.
So for everybody that's not implementing an African plan, you're in trouble. And I keep telling you guys that.
Yeah, man. I mean, we can't say it enough, and we're going to keep saying it again and again and again, that you have to see your future beyond these borders. I do like what TD Jacque said. He had an event in Atlanta a few weeks ago, but even last year when he was at Black Enterprise and he was the keynote speaker, so he had a whole hour to share about anything, and he spent 40 minutes of it talking about Africa. He launched his latest book at that time, that was called SOAR. He launched it in South Africa as opposed to here in the United States. And he talked about something that I say all the time, that the internet is the great equalizer. So no longer do you have to see your business only happening in your geography. You can see it from a global perspective. And so when you follow what leaders are doing, I think it behooves you to pay attention. Even if you don't like them, even if you're not on board with their leadership domain, still follow the money. People who are influential, where are they looking? Where are they going? What are they doing? And that will give you a pretty clear heads up of what the next 5-10 years is going to look like. So you really have to start paying attention to things and opportunities, seeing around the corner and not just down the street, because anybody can look down the street. And I do want to address this. TD Jakes can make a lot of money in Africa from the church.
Yeah, they got enough of those.
He's not going to Africa Sweet Cakes looking for money. He is working in the digital landscape from a film, media, and entertainment perspective. He's a part of a major media outlet there, because if we think media has been able to drive public opinion today, we've seen nothing compared to what it's going to have influence in the next decade. And I do want to say that even our very judiciary here in America, and maybe around the world, is in perils, because before you could sequester people when they were sitting as jurors on a case, but because of social media today, and you still can sequester them in a room and take their cell phones, etc., but it doesn't mean that prior to them being selected as a juror, that they weren't already heavily engaged in following the story and this and that. So social media will become public court, and that public court will take on a different value in the next decade. So people no longer have to do things on a organic level as social media becomes the giant of influence. And that is what key leaders from Oprah to TD Jakes and everybody out there is looking at, how to engage or increase their digital engagement globally. That's where the internet is the great equalizer. So that's where, even though you may be standing in the US, you still need to look at your business plan and see where it fits into the African growth story, because you don't even have to live in Africa to be a contributor of its growth or to accelerate your business in that market. And I think that that's important to recognize as well.
Have you been keeping up with Yvette Carnell and phone talks? No, okay. Don't want to ask in the chat room, so that's enough.
Oh, okay.
Let's see here. I'm not a big fan of mega church pastors, so
me either.
TD Jakes is one. So.
Well, I want to say that just because he's a mega church pastor or anyone, and I'm not even in that space anymore in terms of I'm no longer a Sunday go to meeting person. And I do believe that we are moving into a phase more around your spirituality, where you really need to work out your own soul salvation. Not that if you're a Christian in church and all, I'm still a Christian. My Jesus is not white, Dinus. I sent you a picture of how gorgeous he is a few months ago. But the point is that I'm just no longer moving exclusively in that space. It doesn't align with what I personally believe. However, I'm not going to make a blanket statement that all mega church pastors are hook and crooks and things like that, because the truth is TD Jakes doesn't really make his money in church. He's more developing his, no,
I'm
really.
sure he's made a lot of money.
He's made money in church, as any pastor would, although I believe that that's not been the core. I mean, that's how his platform was built, but he's always had endeavors to be out there doing other things that shape people's thinking in a positive way. And so I kind of see him as an exception. Him and Joel Osteen, believe it or not, I have a lot of respect for Joel. He is a pastor that didn't go to seminary. He worked 20 something or more years behind the camera. And when his father died, the mantle was given to him that he didn't even pursue. Right. And so all that is going on really is his divine inheritance. And I have just huge respect for him because of who he is and what he's done with his giftings and how God enabled him to do that. And it was not his choosing on his own. So TD Jakes and Joel Osteen are the two guys that I really have huge respect for. Everybody else I can say is kind of in my book, but we all carry our different opinions, but I do see them as effective people that's not in it for the money and is really trying to make an impact. And TD Jakes also talks in a lot of spaces outside of the church domain that I have huge respect for him and his impact as he reaches across different environments to be a leader. And not everybody can do that. But anyway.
Shout out to Dollar Bill for the super chat. Thank you. Thank you so much, guys. Make sure you hit that like button. We might open it up for questions too, as far as someone coming on and asking questions. So shoot me an email. Again, no trolls, okay? We'll let two people on if you want to talk to Jacque directly. And then after that, we'll close out. So again, no trolls, okay? No trolls. So email me, and I will email you the link, and you can ask Jacque a couple questions since we have her. Two people, okay? And after that, we'll close out. As you can see, my people don't like
yeah. Those guys. To each his own. I've been on a journey with Bishop Jakes for a long time. I remember when he started on TBN, someone called to have him come on, and I really watched him grow from zero to who he is today. And that for me breeds the respect that I give him and just what I know he's wanting to do with Africa in the next decade. It's really not about money. I know you can't always believe that after you get a certain amount of money and influence, like what else, right? In life that you just can't, we can't take any of it with us. So at some point, your real true purpose has to rise above stuff. And
thank you, Nadu. Tell them Dinus provides valuable resources. Stop being stingy and super chat. Thank you, Nadu. Thank you so much.
That's right. So can we open schools in Africa?
Of course you can.
Absolutely.
Eunice, if you're interested in opening up a school, please email me because I have a location where you can open it. If you're serious, please email me. You can come to Oruo and you can open it there in Nigeria.
That's good. Yeah, can we talk about some of the work you're doing there?
Yeah, go ahead. Just getting things started. I'm actually headed back next month. I'll leave May 10th. And I'm really going to solidify some projects I can present to you guys and also handle some other business matters. But what I want to do is go get projects lined up so I can say, hey, people, these are the opportunities there. Would you like to invest? So that's my plan for when I go back next month. So you guys can have something that you can see, you know. So shout out to Chima Madu for the super chat. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Just think that literally anything. What do you mean, just think literally anything?
So, again, if anyone wants to come on, let me know. Shoot me an email. If not, we'll go ahead and close down here shortly. You send me an email.
If you want to contact me, put my details there too, info@profileafrica.org. Paula Brown says, can I open a bank account in Africa without being there?
No, you got to go.
No, you need to go there. You need to go to your relevant country that you want to open the account in. They're still trying to make sure people aren't using Africa as a place to do money laundering, so you can't do things like that online.
Well, you could open up a bank account online, but you have to either have a business registered in Africa or be African. So
yeah, and then you can in some countries register your company online. There are services that do that. I know we do that for companies that want to register their businesses in South Africa. But you have to have like your corporate papers in order to go and open up a business account at any bank for sure in South Africa.
Dennis, what do you think about farming? I mean, it's a great opportunity.
Yeah, agriculture is huge. Big business across the continent. So that's a great industry.
Thanks to everybody for the super chats. Thank you. Thank you so much. So what we'll do, we'll go ahead and close out. Miss Jackie, take it away. Anything you want to share in closing?
No, I just say keep an eye on the progress that we're making with the African Union. I think some amazing business frameworks are coming for people who want to invest in Africa, for people who want to take their skill and talent to Africa. I know I have some programs that I have implemented to be able to do that. And so again, if you need to reach me, you're welcome to reach out to me at info@profileafrica.org. And I'm just excited to be here and share with you again. Don't forget, 7 out of 10 of the world's fastest growing economies are on the continent of Africa, and Africa will own the next decade. I'll be there. Dinus will be there. Will you?
Are you familiar with the African Business Conference at Harvard?
Oh yeah, I attended that a couple of times.
Can you speak on it real quick?
It's very. They usually have a lot of good corporate sponsors. They usually have great speakers. It's a great networking environment for you to meet people that's in the game and actually doing successful business. Every February, I remember when I went to that, I think it was in 2015, it was so cold and snowing and everything. And being that I'm from the South, it was very painful, but it was fully worth it. And I do encourage people to go to that, but also look at, I don't know where everybody is primarily, but look at going to Africa networking events as much as you can. There are some significant conferences that take place in the US a few times a year. I say also follow what the African Union is doing across all social media platforms, because those new clusters of groups will be reaching out to your local communities and holding more think tanks, to town halls, to industry-specific opportunity sessions to keep you up on what is actually going on. But definitely stay tuned and keep an eye on Dinus. He's someone to watch in the next decade, as well as follow us with what we're going to be doing with the African Union.
Mr. Amelia, thank you for the super chat. So how can people reach you one more time and tell everybody about your website?
Okay, yes. To reach me, you can at info@profileafrica.org. And then on May 25th, Africa Day this year in New York City, we're going to be recasting our brand from Profile Africa to Profile Africa Worldwide. And you can always go on our website at profileafrica.org to hear about those specific details. We'll be releasing that to this coming Monday.
Mufasa, usually I'll email you offline, Mufasa, as far as how to find the events. Usually if there's like a consulate in an individual city like LA, because Mufasa, I think you're in San Diego, so they usually have the events in LA.
Also, you could go on Eventbrite.
Eventbrite's another.
Yeah, Eventbrite. And then like Google Africa inside of Eventbrite, and it'll show you every African-oriented event that's happening for a month. So stay on top of things like that, because those are the environments where you get out there and you meet people and you understand better how people are actually doing business and succeeding well in Africa, as well as top events in your area where you're given an opportunity to dialogue with even some of the African leaders. They come to the US on a regular basis, usually in April. That's the other thing. In April, during the World Bank Spring Conference, most African leaders are in that space in DC. And then in September, for the reconvening of the United Nations, every head of state and prime minister around the world has to report to the United Nations reconvening of the General Assembly in September. So usually September in New York and in DC, there are a lot of events where is Africa focused by these huge organizations, domestic organizations that focus on Africa. And then you get to meet the presidents and their ambassadors and everyone. And you want to start becoming aligned, even if that's not your space. You want to be able to get a sense of who these new rising African leaders are and what their perspectives are with regards to who we are as the diaspora and how much more valuable we're going to become to them in the future. They're not untouchable. You can engage with them as with the ambassador, the African Union ambassador in DC. And I just think having a sense of culture through these people, as well as just showing your willingness to be a collaboration partner, is really key as well. That's some of the public relations aspect to doing business successfully in Africa across the continent. If you're not able to adapt to culture and their cultural nuances or their cultural frameworks, if you're not easily adaptable to that, that will hinder every business opportunity. And I don't care how much money you have, as an African American, you still need to understand African culture and be able to respect it, because that's number one in how you are winning in Africa.
All right, so guys, everyone, thank you so much for joining us. Make sure you check out profileafrica.org. Also, make sure you go to Search for Guru on Instagram, Snapchat, Twitter, and Facebook. Like, share, and subscribe. Until next time, family, Dinah Samir, Miss Jackie Johnson. Peace.
Bye.